On the official National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences website, the United States government has a section dedicated to children's entertainment. If you click from the games page to the songs page and then the patriotic songs page, you'll find a song called Dixie, also known as I Wish I Was in Dixie's Land, that was originally published in 1859. On the page is a 36-second clip of the song and its associated lyrics that describe a narrator longing to go back to Dixie, a slang word for the part of the American South that would become the Confederacy. Though the author of the song has been debated, many credit it to Daniel Decatur Emmett, an Ohio-born musician who was also the founder of the first blackface minstrel troupe, the Virginia Minstrels. However, that last part isn't mentioned by the government website. Instead, it says that he was enlisted in a minstrel group when they stopped in Mount Vernon and needed a replacement for a sick player, beginning a long musical career. But that's not necessarily true. Though he was recruited to a circus as a blackface performer in 1835, the origin of minstrel shows is attributed to his group, the Virginia Minstrels, who were founded in around 1843 by Emmett and his colleagues when they started playing music together in New York City. The music they played consisted of racist songs that parodied stereotypes of Black American experience for cheap entertainment. The Virginia Minstrels not only perpetuated racism of the time, but they created an entirely new avenue for racist artistic expression. With the popularization of minstrel shows, Black American experience was further codified into musical culture in a way that's still being untangled today. But the website doesn't mention any of that. Instead of showing Emmett as an active instigator in racist musical traditions, the only mention of minstrel puts him in a passive position, making it seem like someone else asked him to participate. We believe the Hutchinson family does not object to the Virginia Minstrels, Christie's Minstrels, the Ethiopian Serenaders, or any of the filthy scum of white society, who have stolen from us a complexion denied them by nature, in which to make money and pander to the corrupt taste of their white fellow citizens. The blurb on the website even says that the song was one of Abraham Lincoln's favorites, focusing on that more than the fact that the song was largely, and continues to be, an anthem for the Confederacy before, during, and after the Civil War. Emmett's supposed opposition to the song's Confederate context doesn't excuse the fact that his role in minstrel shows perpetuated systemic racism in a tangible way. This isn't even taking into account the complicated origins of the song, with some asserting that Emmett didn't even write the song, but either learned it from or co-composed it with the Snowden Family Band, an African-American musical group. Though the government site mentions the ambiguity of authorship, it still downplays Emmett's role in minstrelsy. There is no smoking gun concerning Dixie. Early minstrels themselves claimed to be authentic delineators of the music, dance, and oratory of Black America, but definitive proof of sources has long been elusive. Emmett used Dixie as a tool for his minstrel shows, popularizing it in white American culture, and eventually making the song arguably the most well-known minstrel song of all time. It doesn't take much research to see that original publications of the song were not as polished as the ones posted on the aforementioned website. Instead, the song was published and often performed in a dialect that parodied Black Americans and fit specifically within the minstrel tradition that perpetuated racist stereotypes. It also doesn't take much searching to see that Dixie is still considered a popular song for children. It's included in a handful of children's albums and songbooks, with updated lyrical versions that remove much of the racism in the original. However, the racism of Dixie isn't entirely removed, even with the modern-day versions. At its core, it's still a song about someone wishing to go back to Dixie. When the song was written, it was explicitly a song that romanticized the pre-Civil War South. On top of this, the song's meaning has only been amplified throughout history. For example, it was used by white supremacists in the 1960s as a symbol of pride to protest the ongoing civil rights movement. Even today, it's still used by white supremacist organizations to reminisce about the Confederacy. Thomasina Neely Chandler, an ethnomusicologist and music professor at Spelman College in Atlanta, says the important thing to remember is that Dixie is a harmful misrepresentation of blacks. It's not the song or the text, Neely Chandler says, so much as how it's used in a distorted way to present a particular people with an image that really doesn't represent them. Seeing a song with that history labeled as a children's song might be surprising to some, but it's not uncommon. Dixie is just one of the many so-called American children's songs that has roots in racism and minstrel traditions. As you might gather from the title of this video, you can hear many of these songs to this day at a variety of Disney parks. Let's talk about Splash Mountain.
Fun to be free, to be on the move, to go for a hike or whatever you like to do. To all there is to be done. It's fun, it's fun, it's fun to be free, fun to be free.
If you've you've ever been to a Disney theme park, it's likely that you've seen or ridden Splash Mountain. Originally opened in 1989 at Disneyland in California, the attraction has become one of the most well-known Disney rides out there. Since the beginning, Splash Mountain has been praised for its unique blend of immersion, soundtrack, storytelling, and thrills, with the company even building 2 other versions of the ride at the Magic Kingdom in Florida's Walt Disney World and Tokyo Disneyland. Many theme park fans appreciate the ride's attention to detail, with almost every prop and animatronic serving a specific purpose in the world building. However, there are some details in the ride's construction and queue that hint at more context than the ride itself does. For example, the American iterations of the ride have quotes spread around the queue. These quotes aren't attributed to anyone, but those familiar with Disney history will instantly recognize them as being said by the Uncle Remus character in Song of the South, the movie that Splash Mountain is based off of. Instead of portraying the whole plot and plantation setting of the film, Splash Mountain only takes the cartoon segment of the film, originally utilizing recycled animatronics to tell the story of Brer Rabbit as he tried to leave the Briar Patch. Some aspects of the story have been altered to avoid the original racist connotations, but the ride still represents the cartoon segments of the original movie. Though there is no mention of Song of the South in or near Splash Mountain, it's worth noting that the film used to be mentioned on the official Disney website in descriptions of the attraction before being removed. Song of the South is something Disney has tried to forget in the last 30 years. Despite having re-released the film multiple times since 1946, the company has rarely mentioned it since the 5th re-release of the movie in 1986. They've also since pulled it from distribution, with Bob Iger even saying as recently as March that it would never appear on the Disney Plus streaming service. Similar to Dixie, removing a majority of the source material doesn't rid Splash Mountain of its problematic nature. If you're interested in learning more about this, I highly recommend checking out the You Must Remember This podcast series on 6 Degrees of Song of the South. Karina Longworth does a great deep dive into the history behind the source material, movie, and its context in American cinema. Sean Roselle also did a video breaking down the film that I highly recommend. As always, links to all sources and resources mentioned in this video will be in the description. Similar to the seemingly anonymous quotes from Uncle Remus that are spread throughout the queue also features instrumental music that further references Song of the South. For example, all of the music featured on the ride is sourced from the film, but none of them mention Uncle Remus directly. This is different in the queue, where an instrumental version of That's What Uncle Remus Said plays along with other songs of the film, such as Let the Rain Pour Down and Song of the South, among others. A combination of critical and cultural apathy, of liberal guilt and conservative denial, subsequently has allowed the film to fall seemingly between the cracks, allowing for Walt Disney to build Splash Mountain and erase Song of the South from collective popular culture memories. Racist undertones may swell beneath Splash Mountain for some, but not for the millions of visitors who walk through Disney's gates each year without the faintest clue of what Song of the South is and was. The queue music also features a variety of similarly sounding songs that are different recordings depending on the exact location. The Disneyland version of the attraction uses jazz band arrangements due to its proximity to the New Orleans Square section of the park, while the Florida and Tokyo versions utilize a more bluegrass/country type instrumentation that was mostly recorded by session musicians in Nashville. If you go to Disney World, though, there's a chance that you'll hear an instrumental version of Dixie, the same song that I discussed at the beginning of the video. Though it doesn't appear at Disneyland or Tokyo Disneyland, there are still minstrel songs to be heard at all 3 locations, such as Oh Susanna and Camptown Races, among many others. There's a unique dynamic present when you present songs with virtually none of their original context. The various Tomorrowland areas at Disney parks do this well, recontextualizing recordings as a way to build the story of the land. If you want to learn more about the history of Tomorrowland music, I'll be linking my video on that subject in the description. When you consider how important the lyrics are to understanding Dixie's context and negative influence on American society, it feels weird to only be presented with an instrumental version at a theme park located in a former Confederate state. Oh, and by the way, the original Song of the South hinted at in the titular song and movie is implied to be Dixie. That's how influential the song was and is on Southern culture. Even if not all versions contain Dixie in the queue, they still feature songs like Zippity Doo-Dah that have uncomfortable histories alongside minstrel traditions. Karina Longworth did an entire episode of the You Must Remember This podcast dedicated to that song, so I recommend checking it out if you want to learn more. No matter which attraction you go to, though, it's likely that you'll hear the aforementioned instrumental versions of songs from Song of the South. Hearing instrumental versions of songs mentioning Uncle Remus while Disney also tries to distance the attraction from its source material feels uncomfortable. I wanted to talk about this musical dynamic because of how it only represents a small piece of what is happening and has happened in the United States. The politics of forgetting and obscuring the origins of songs like Dixie and movies like Song of the South and referring to them as products of their times feels disingenuous when you take into account the considerable backlash that both pieces have attracted since their creation. And when you have a government website peddling false narratives about minstrel shows under the guise of children's music, it's difficult not to think about the systems in place that make injustice the norm for non-white individuals in the country. As a white person originally from the East Coast of the United States, I also grew up not understanding the context of attractions like Splash Mountain. I would listen to the music from the ride and Song of the South and only be reminded of the good times I had riding in a log flume alongside animatronics. After all, there wasn't a ride quite like it, but I think that lack of context I had growing up was and is something that needs to be addressed. For kids who know Splash Mountain before Song of the South, having fun on the former can cloud any judgment or critical analysis that can happen with the latter. Music is a very powerful tool, and when presented without context, can also distort certain histories and situations. As I became more interested in music history, it only became more apparent that music and art in general often reflect the societies that they come from. American music history is filled with theft and oppression, and I believe to ignore those aspects would be to allow those systems to continue and to have songs like Dixie be considered children's songs that are still part of a national identity for many people. As for Splash Mountain, I think it's possible to acknowledge how innovative of a ride it was and enjoy aspects of it, while also addressing the problematic nature of how it sanitized its source material. If you were someone like me who grew up not having to see the ways in which Splash Mountain is uncomfortable or problematic for many people, I encourage you to listen to others who have voiced their concerns. Though Disney will likely always be a problematic fave, the infamous legacy of Song of the South and how it's manifested in the theme parks feels like something that can be addressed if people want it to be. I also don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for Disney to retheme the ride in the future. It's certainly been done before with major attractions. As brave activists are continuing to fight for justice in the United States, it's important to remember that a safer future is possible. In making this video, I also wanted to use my platform to send you to resources and organizations you can donate to help Black activists in the United States. I'll also be providing the resources mentioned in this video, along with more sources giving context to Song of the South and racism in media. Black Lives Matter. With Splash Mountain, Disney effectively pulled the original roots of Song of the South out from under the film. Instead of a richer, if far more problematic text, Splash Mountain represents a commodified, homogenized version, if any version, of its now distant, masked, and perverted relative. Splash Mountain is the deracinated, consumer-friendly evolution of Song of the South.